And I want to bring in the members of Virginia Roberts Giuffre's family, her brothers Sky Roberts and Danny Wilson, as well as their wives Amanda Roberts and Lynette Wilson. And I'm just so grateful to have all of you here tonight to talk about something that I know is really painful, but also really important for each of you. And Danny, I think it's hard for anybody to imagine the emotional toll the last few weeks have probably had on your family. What made you decide to speak out tonight?
I don't think it's even the last 2 weeks. I think it's the last 10 years. I'm speaking out because my sister is not here to speak out, and I think she would, and I'm here to speak out for the survivors.
And Sky, your sister was just 16 years old when she was working at Mar-a-Lago in 2000, and when she was recruited by Ghislaine Maxwell. As this has played out over the last few weeks, I imagine you were probably quite surprised when the Justice Department sent their number 2 in charge to go and sit down with Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah, we were very surprised. I think, she was preyed upon by Ghislaine Maxwell as well as many other predators out there, but she was preyed upon at Mar-a-Lago. And we were very shocked and very surprised that they were giving her a voice and giving her a platform to essentially possibly make a deal. And reality to that is that there's so many survivors still out there that are affected by that, including my sister, who's not here to speak for herself. And I think it's important that we stand beside them, that we stand in front of you and in front of everyone out there with a sign of strength on my sister's behalf, because she's not here to do that herself. But we stand with survivors here, and I want to make it clear that, she does not get the opportunity to get out. She deserves to rot in prison where she belongs because of what she's done to my sister and so many other women. And it's absolutely a pure sense of evil.
A pure sense of evil. I think some people remember this and think of Jeffrey Epstein, but may not remember Ghislaine Maxwell. And I know that y'all as a family have said that at times Virginia said that Maxwell could be more cruel than Epstein was. And Amanda or Lynette, I wonder what either of you remember about what she had to say and her view of that.
Yeah, I just remember very vivid and specific conversations with her and talking about Ghislaine and almost describing her as this puppet master, and being this organizer of things and being so viciously cruel to the young women, and knowing that they were so vulnerable and young, she targeted them specifically, and she was also very complicit, in those actions. She wasn't just like a recruiter. She participated and viciously participated with these girls and abusing them. And so she just described her as this monster, of a nightmare.
Well, and, Lynette, remembering that, I wonder, as we're in this conversation of whether or not she'll be granted immunity to speak to Congress, or whether a pardon would be on the table, or even a reduction in her sentence that she's serving right now. Not only what message that would send to someone like your sister, who is so outspoken about this and such an advocate, but also to the survivors, the other survivors in this moment.
I think that's really the point, and a big reason why we are even speaking out, because it does send a message to the survivors that, if you're in power, if you've got money, if you've got connections, then you're above the law. Because if there is any kind of conversation around leniency or potentially getting out. This wasn't someone who was a minor player. This was someone who was an organizer in this sex trafficking ring. She was alongside Jeffrey Epstein, and as Virginia said, she was most of the time worse than him. So it's just sending a message to survivors that their voices and all of the hard work that they've done for the last however many years, 10 plus years, doesn't matter, and it does. And as a people, we should be listening to survivors' voices and survivors' testimonies rather than someone that was convicted of the crime.
Sky, when you hear the word stolen used to describe what happened to your sister when she was recruited away and sex trafficked, I wonder what goes through your mind.
She wasn't stolen. She was preyed upon at his property, at President Trump's property. And I think it's very important that we don't treat it like stolen. Seems very impersonal. It feels very much like an object. And these survivors are not objects. Women are not objects. What goes through my mind is that it's time to protect survivors, and it's time to protect the young women and our future generation of young women. So no, she wasn't stolen. She was preyed upon. And it certainly makes you kind of ask the question, how much he knew during that time, right? Even a couple of years later, even after he, I believe he had stated something along the lines of cutting off communication or kicking him out. He described Jeffrey Epstein as somebody who really enjoyed being around young women. And so she was preyed upon. She wasn't stolen. That's a predator that came and took her and did absolutely horrible things to her and so many other women out there.
Danny, does it raise questions for you too about what was known at the time?
I think my sister's whole story makes me ask a lot of questions. How things went down and how things were facilitated. I think something that I was thinking of earlier was, are there still people working there that are underage or young women? Hopefully we've come up as a society and put laws in place to protect young people at work. I know when I was growing up, you could just get a job. I know now, having a young one at home, there are things put in place, and I think that those kind of checks and balances need to be put in, everywhere.
When it comes to questions, you write in a statement today that even 20 years later, Virginia would wake up screaming with nightmares about what happened to her, about being trafficked. And if you could say something to the president or someone who does have the power to pardon her or reduce her sentence for Ghislaine Maxwell, Amanda, I'll start with you, but how you would respond to that, or what message you would want to get across?
I think we get so used to seeing the black and white of things, and we're seeing these headlines. And I think that we've completely forgotten that these are human beings who are still surviving the very real trauma they endured. And that never goes away. You become strong and learn how to fight through it. And that's what she did. She turned that pain into strength and let it drive her to keep going. But it never leaves you. And people who commit those crimes against someone deserve to feel those repercussions. They don't get to rest easy while these survivors are still trying to live their life every single day. You don't get to rest easy.
Lynette, some people may argue that maybe people should listen to Ghislaine Maxwell because she saw and heard what happened. I wonder if you think that she has any credibility, though, from your perspective, knowing what you know and heard from Virginia.
Actually, no. I don't see any real reason to speak with her. She has perjured herself in the past, and we're talking about a sex trafficker, a monster that could do unspeakable things to young women without conscience. So what would she do to get herself out of the situation that she's in, the uncomfortable prison sentence? I think that, survivors have come forward. They put her in jail. They've come forward with their stories. They've come forward with the allegations. They have the information. It's already in there. There's no way that Epstein would be in jail or Ghislaine would be in jail if they didn't already have that information. So we question what can she really add and what's going to become of that.
Sky, in the statement, your family notes that you believe what we've heard from very powerful figures lately has only raised more questions that you say you want answers to, that the public wants answers to, but also that the survivors deserve here. What questions do you want answered tonight?
I think one for me is, when are we going to start believing survivors? I think that's a very powerful one, and it's certainly something every survivor feels. We've had the opportunity to speak with so many powerful survivors out there, and I think it's important their voices get to be heard. I think another question that I have, and it pertains to, we already talked through why Ghislaine Maxwell should not even be considered remotely by the Department of Justice to be released or get some sort of pardon. But I think the other thing that we need to speak about is, why aren't the documents being released? And so we want that question answered. We want to know, why aren't the documents being released? They deserve justice. These survivors had something taken away from them they can never get back. And it's time for these monsters to be exposed and get something they can never get back, which is their freedom.
Danny, do you also want to see everything released?
Oh, absolutely. I got we all sat down and talked to survivors of this and other things, and it was really personal for me in that these women, they've all gone on with their lives, and they've had kids, and they've bought houses, and they have jobs, but this has still followed them. The pain that comes from this type of behavior in our society has followed them, and I think they just, we as, and somebody asked me this earlier, I don't look at this as a Democrat or a Republican thing. I look at this as a human thing. I think everybody on all sides of our country, for these women, need to stand up. And everybody, once that collective voice is together, and that's my dream, and I think that was my sister's dream, once that collective voice is together, we're untouchable. The people the innocents, the people that go through this, and that's what I think is going to stop this type of behavior.
Do you think your sister would have wanted this information out there?
I know it.
That's exactly what I was going to say. And one of my I think one of the last months that she was with us, we had a conversation about that. And still to the day that we lost her, she was still fighting for those documents to be released. They are sitting in our court system right now. She wanted the world to know what they've done to her and so many other survivors. And she had been fighting that to her very last day. And I think we have taken that mantle on. And we will continue to fight with her and for all the other survivors so that their truth is known to the world and that they're vindicated.
She told you in one of your last conversations that she wanted the information out there.
Yes. Unequivocally, yes. She wants the information out. It is a current case that has been active and is sitting in the courts right now for her documents to be unsealed and for those monsters to be exposed for who they are and what they've done.
Everything that y'all have said tonight is so powerful and so compelling and understandably very difficult and challenging. And I just want to say thank you to each of you for being willing to come and talk about her legacy, her advocacy for survivors, and just what that meant. Sky, Amanda, Danny, Lynette, I want to thank you all so much for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.